when they when they don't know what all their options are and they don't have that education. So I'm going to go through a whole bunch of stuff. And then at the end, if there's anything you guys want me to circle around back to, anything I didn't touch on that you want to ask about, I will do my best to answer it. Yeah. So starting with your newborn. Well, actually, no, I'm going to start, since a lot of you are expecting. Last time we had a lot of people who already had a baby, but since a lot of you are expecting, you have this kind of advantage right now to plan ahead a little bit. And I think one of the best things you can do when you're pregnant is plan for the postpartum period. Whether that's just like setting up a meal train in your community and knowing that you're going to have friends and family come by and just drop off a meal. Because so many people want to come by and hold your baby. Everybody wants to see the cute baby, but you need to be taken care of and you need that time to focus on bonding with your baby and settling in as a family. So I think setting up a meal train, arranging for postpartum support, reaching out to your family members who want to visit and plan who's visiting when, where they're going to stay. Are they staying in a hotel or are they staying at your house? Are you expected to really host them, or are they coming in to be really helpful? If they're coming in to be really helpful, have those ones visit first. The ones who want to visit and just like get in those baby snuggles, wait a little bit longer to have them come along. Wait until you're really settled in. Yeah. And also I think it's really important to plan for lactation support if you plan to breastfeed, just not even like it's not just establishing care with somebody ahead of time, but just having a list of people you can call for each thing. So like writing down the name of a couple local lactation consultants that people recommended and having their information ready to go so that you're not waking up at 3 a.m. panicked, like, okay, I need to find a lactation consultant. Start researching those things ahead of time and kind of figuring out who your village of support is. Because we say it takes a village and then you get sent home without one. And unfortunately that responsibility falls on the parents to build that village. And I think the best way to do it is to plan ahead. Because there are going to be moments where you wake up at 3 a.m. in a panic, thinking about lactation consultants or postpartum doulas or needing a different pediatrician or something. So just do all that research, as much research you can on those local services and having a list ahead of time. That's my whole little spiel on the planning ahead, but getting into your newborn. So I'm going to start with just like newborn appearance, because a lot of people, they have this baby, they're born, they look like this squishy little thing that you don't really know what to do with. And unless you grew up around babies or have had a baby before, are an aunt or something, aunt or uncle, and have just been around babies, they kind of are like this foreign little alien creature. But when they're born, they tend to have a little bit of a blue color to them, it takes them a little bit to like tone up. So I've had a lot of families that I've worked with who are like, when my baby was born, I was like, why does it look like this? They also may have more of a cone shaped head, depending on how the birth went. With a C-section, you wouldn't have that. But I would do a little bit of research on normal newborn appearance. Once you're home and you're more settled in, you get a lot of fun things that come up that result in a lot of calls to a pediatrician of like, why is my baby doing this thing? Is this normal? And I think some of those things that you should be aware of are baby acne. Your baby's skin is likely going to break out and be very red and have lots of small acne like bumps on it. This is normal. You don't need to put anything on it. It's one of those things where you just watch it and it should go away on its own. It can last a while. But if you're concerned about it, obviously my biggest thing is if you're concerned about something, message your pediatrician. There's no harm in it. They get calls all day long from parents that are wondering about something. And you're going to feel better if you just make the call and ask the question than if you just sit around wondering. So if you're really concerned about something, trust your gut and just ask. Along with the baby acne comes cradle cap. So your baby's Scalp is likely to get very dry and flaky. Again, this is normal. It can last a while. It's not the cutest, prettiest thing to see on your baby, but it is normal. For this, you can wash their scalp, take a little like soft brush and do a circular motion, and that should help with it. But again, it's normal. Your baby, even when they're first born, is likely to have very peely skin. They just went from being in this space in the womb where they're in amniotic fluid, they're now brought out into the world, and their body is going to take a bit to adjust to this new place that they are. And along with that comes this like emotional adjustment for them too. They went from a space where they had everything that they needed right there, to this big, bright, scary, kind of weird world that we live in. And a lot of people expect to be able to just like set their baby down somewhere, which would be great for us, right? To set your baby down and be able to go about your day and get things done and just tend to their very basic needs. But they end up having a very emotional need and needing to be close to you, because you're what they know. Even your partner, they know their voice. And your dogs too. That's all the stuff that's going on in your household is something that they become very aware of when you're pregnant. So I think just being aware of that and aware that there's this big adjustment going on when they're first born, and just having that mindset is great. Another thing with their appearance is the umbilical cord. Usually an umbilical cord doesn't need any care. The only thing you need to make sure you do is when you put their diaper on, make sure the diaper isn't covering the umbilical cord clamp, but it'll fall off within the first 2 weeks or so. If there's any concern with it, your pediatrician would have information on that, but really there's nothing that really needs to be done there. It's just something that needs, like a lot of their appearance issues with their skin, is just leave it alone, and it'll heal on its own. Getting into diapers again, the fun of the poop progression. So when your baby first comes home, when they're first born, they're likely to have a black kind of, I have an image I will show you of colors, not of baby poop, but of the expected colors to see with baby poop. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you guys this, but I can also send it out afterwards in an email. But meconium is a black, kind of dark green tar-like poop, and that's the first poop that your baby has. Eventually, if you're breastfeeding, your baby's poop will switch into a more like mustardy, seedy kind of color. And then if you're formula feeding, it might go green. It might go green too if you're breastfeeding, but usually it's kind of have this like mustardy color, and then with breastfed babies, it typically stays that like mustardy color. I don't know if you guys, so that one, the mustardy color, and then more of like a black tar like in the very beginning, and that usually goes away after like a day or two. By the first 5 days, it should be transitioned into that more like mustard color. Yeah, so the fun of diapers. One of the tips I have with diaper changes is well, I'm going to show you guys the diaper change actually, because some people don't know how to change a diaper. I think most of you do, because a lot of you have mentioned that you have toddlers. This is the baby I'm going to be demonstrating on. It's a doll, a very sweet, kind of creepy looking doll. But she is going to be our model because she is about the size of a normal baby. So I'm going to position you guys where you can see what I'm doing. This might be a little tricky. Okay. So obviously remove your baby's bottoms. When you're lifting, you're only lifting your baby's legs. So you're not like lifting their back up. You're just lifting their bottom so that their head is still, you don't want to bend their neck. My favorite thing to do when changing a diaper is to put the diaper underneath them before I do anything with the diaper that is on them. So lift their bottom, place a diaper underneath, then remove the diaper that's currently on them, the dirty diaper. You can use, if it's not too dirty, I do like a wipe with it and clear everything out and pull it away. And that fresh diaper is already underneath them, ready to go, because what's going to happen eventually is while you're getting wipes and things, your baby's going to pee or poop or something on the changing table. And yes, you usually have a changing pad down, which will catch things, but it's also nice to just catch it in a diaper and be able to throw the diaper away versus having it all over the changing table. So then you just put the fresh diaper after you're done wiping everything up. There are sticky tabs on the side that come around the front. And you have a diaper on your baby. But yeah, my biggest thing is like put that diaper underneath before you start the diaper change. I had a family I was working with the other day and they told me that they changed their baby's diaper on the dining room table. And she decided that she was going to poop right in the middle of a diaper change. And I was like, did you put the diaper underneath first? Try it. It works. It catches everything. Yeah, but you're going to end up talking about baby poop a lot once you have a baby. I'm sure those of you that have toddlers already know. Poop comes up in a lot of conversations. Yeah. Along with the diaper change stuff, I recommend at nighttime that you change your baby's diaper at the beginning of the feeding or halfway through the feeding. One of the biggest concerns I see with families is around infant sleep. I think that it's important to remember that at night, you're not doing what we call social feeding. So you're not going in to like really get your baby awake and play with them. You want them to know that like it's still nighttime, we're trying to stay asleep, but you want them awake enough that they're going to actually eat. Some babies will wake right up and be very alert at night and will wake often, want to feed often. Other babies will sleep pretty deeply and need to be woken up. So if you have a baby that's like that, I recommend doing the diaper change at the beginning, or just stripping them down enough to get them awake and have them start eating. And then like halfway through the feeding, going and changing their diaper to get them like fully awake. Obviously, if your baby has a dirty diaper at the end of the feeding, change them. It's worth it to get that diaper changed and have them more comfortable and then spend that time getting them back down to sleep so they sleep really soundly versus thinking that they're really sound asleep, putting them down in a dirty diaper and then having them wake up uncomfortable or wake up with a blowout because their diaper overfills. But I really like doing the beginning of a feeding diaper change. Yeah, I'm gonna keep going with the sleep stuff if everyone's okay with that. And then any questions you guys have about what we just talked about with newborn appearance, we can circle back to at the end. Infant sleep is kind of my specialty. And I think it's really important, not just for the baby to get good sleep for their development, but for the parents. When you're sleep deprived, it's really hard to do anything. Your mental health starts to it takes a huge toll on your mental health. It takes a huge toll on your physical health. Being expected to run around and take care of a baby all day and your toddler on no sleep is just not practical. And I think that's why this is another thing that can be discussed before the baby is born, is kind of what those expectations are, especially like between you and if you have a partner. Are they going to be doing some of the nighttime feedings? Are you doing every other feeding? Is one of you doing one night and the other one is doing the next night? I think one of the good setups I've seen with partners is having your partner do the evening feed right before bedtime and then being able to like go to sleep earlier. If you're nursing and you plan to pump, just pump right before you go to bed, that sort of thing. But creating a kind of schedule that works well for you guys. I know a lot of families, the partner gets a shorter parental leave and then the birthing parent either ends up staying home in a lot of the families I've worked with, or they just have a longer leave because they were the one birthing the baby and they need a longer leave to physically recover and emotionally, mentally recover. So talking about, what schedule works well in the beginning, depending on what the parental leave you guys have is, and then adapting that when the return to work happens, possibly having someone come in and help if needed. But also just learning about infant sleep so that you can get your baby on track to be a good sleeper. So hopefully, you're not spending that much time up at night. Most of the families I work with, when the baby wakes up at night, we're up for like 10, 15 minutes. We do the diaper change, we get them fed, and they're back asleep. And that's our goal, is to have them back asleep pretty quickly, but making sure we're getting in the amount of feedings we need to. That can be hard for some parents because it can be hard to go right back to sleep when you wake up. So it's the same with the baby. Is like, it's not a social event. You're getting up to feed the baby and you want to go back to sleep. You want them to go back to sleep. So keeping the room dark, not having a lot of noise, obviously having enough light to see what you're doing, especially if you're nursing and really like want to be able to gauge how their latch is and what position you have them in and everything. You might want some more light. So if you have a lamp that can be dimmed or something like that, where it's just in a corner of a room and you're able to go and have like a quiet, peaceful space that's still pretty dark to nurse in. That way you're not waking your body up too much. Because I know a lot of families will get up for the feeding and then they try to go back to sleep and they're laying there for hours. By the time they fall asleep, the baby's ready to eat again. But I think one of the biggest things I recommend is the 5 S's. So the 5 S's are shush, suck, swaddle, swing, and side. So holding your baby on their side. So I usually do like this, where their chest is kind of against me. This baby's head is all crooked. She should be turned more this way, but having their chest kind of against me. So she's in this kind of like side position. I don't really do the swinging motion. I do more of a bouncing. The way I think about it is, when your baby was in the womb, you're walking around a lot. And the time that they're usually the least active is when you're walking around, because it's helping them sleep. So kind of getting that bouncing motion down that feels like the way they would have felt when you were walking. Sucking can be either nursing, using a bottle, or a pacifier. Pacifiers do help reduce the risk of SIDS. There's a lot of concern around nipple confusion. That's like a big topic. My recommendation is just to wait until you establish a good breastfeeding relationship, if that's your goal, and then introduce the pacifier. But also don't use it as a substitute or like to hold off feedings, because a lot of people at night get in this habit where they just want to stick the pacifier in the baby's mouth and hold them off a little bit longer so they can get more sleep. If your baby keeps spitting out that pacifier and is rooting, they are showing that they are hungry, and they don't want the pacifier. They want to eat. So also just understanding your baby's cues, so you know when the pacifier is actually needed. I typically, at the end of a feeding, will offer the pacifier to help soothe them fully asleep, but not at the beginning. The swaddle, I have a bunch of swaddles I'm going to show you guys, but it's going to be hard to show you guys. This is the hard part about being on Zoom, is getting angles to show you. But you take a muslin. So a lot of people will get these like muslin big blankets, and you fold it in a triangle. So triangle, I'm going to lay it so it's triangle down. The point is at the bottom, if that makes sense. And I'm going to put the baby that I almost just dropped on the blanket, where this, I'm trying to figure out how to show you guys this. Okay, so her shoulders are up at this top line. Wonder if I can keep you guys in this position. Maybe not. So this, oh, that did not work. I dropped you guys. Okay, so I'm going to try to find a way to show you this where you can actually see what I'm doing. So if this was your baby laying flat on a surface with the swaddle point down, you're going to take one side and come over one arm and tuck it under the baby's other side. So I'm just going to set her down while I'm doing that. My biggest tip here is if you want the swaddle to stay on your baby, really pull the side that isn't around them while tucking the side that is going under them. So you're cinching it nice and tight. So your baby's like this. Then you're going to take the bottom corner, tuck it up here, and then this arm is going to stay down, and that last side just comes around. I will send a video in our follow-up email that shows a little bit better, because I know we're on Zoom and it's kind of hard to show that, but a provider will probably teach you how to do a swaddle. The thing that a lot of people leave out is really getting it nice and tight. Because then when you wrap that last side around, you have this little baby burrito that's all nice and wrapped up, and they can't get out. They're basically straitjacketed in there. A lot of babies will seem like they're not interested in having their arms down. Usually they are. It's just a little bit hard to get their arms down. Once you do, usually they're pretty happy. So I would try it. If your baby really doesn't like being swaddled, don't force it. You know your baby better than anyone. You're going to be able to pick up on their cues and figure out what they like. But I'm a big fan of swaddling babies in the very beginning. Once they're rolling over, they cannot be swaddled, which is where a lot of like sleep sacks and other like wearable blankets will come in, which I have some that I'm gonna show you guys. It'll just be a little tricky because we're on here, so I can't really show you how to use them, but I'll talk about why each one of them is good. But yeah, so you have your baby swaddled. They have pacifier. The shushing part of the 5 S's is just a shushing noise that you're making where you're going shh. So basically white noise. I really recommend getting some kind of sound machine and having white noise, or downloading, like I have a free app on my phone. It's called White Noise, and there's a setting on there called Shush, and it works great. But that's very similar to the sounds that they're hearing in the womb. And it's all of these tips to kind of get them to sleep. The reason they work is because they're easing that transition from the womb out into the world. We're trying to make things a little bit more similar to how things were there, so that they're less, so they're more comfortable and not just kind of out in this bright new world where they're like, what is going on? Where am I? Where is that one person who's familiar to me? Yeah. This isn't in the 5 S's, but one of my biggest sleep recommendations is to get blackout curtains. A lot of people will think that their baby is not aware of much, and in the beginning, they're not. They're usually pretty sleepy that first week, but then they start to wake up and they become very aware of all that's going on in the world. And even if you just have one little nightlight on in the room, baby's sleep cycles are only 45 minutes. So while an adult has an hour and a half long sleep cycle where they are able to go into a deep sleep and stay in a deep sleep longer, a baby isn't in a deep sleep very long. So there's kind of this like, this short period of time where you have where, like, if you're rocking your baby, you don't want to hold them too long. I mean, obviously get all the baby snuggles in you want, but if your goal is to really put them down and get them down for a good sleep period where you don't have to go in and hold them a lot, rock them once they're asleep for like 10 minutes and then put them down, and have that room really dark, because if they wake up at that 45-minute end of their sleep cycle, they could transition into another sleep cycle, but they're going to go into a light sleep. They might wake up and open their eyes for a minute and look around. And if they have something that they can really focus on, like a bright light right above their head, they're going to look at that. If the room is light and there's a fan, they're probably going to notice that the blades of the fan have like a cool contrast between the ceiling. So even though they don't have the best eyesight, they're able to see something and they want to focus on that. And it can be distracting for them. So keeping the room dark, having that white noise, really helping get them into the next sleep cycle. And also when you're rocking your baby, not just setting them down, because that's a big shift from like being rocked to just like placed down and then the person's gone. So the way I like to rock a baby and hold them is having them here in this side position. My hand that I'm supporting them with, their head is kind of in that crook of my elbow and supported there. And my hand is on their, I would put it like up on top of them and then use this one probably. but you can also do a one-handed hold. But usually I have this hand patting their bottom, and then I do kind of the bouncing motion. And then when I'm ready to switch them, the reason I use this hand on the bottom is because this hand comes to their head, and I switch them to where I'm holding them this way. And I keep patting as I set the baby down. And then, so if the baby was down right now, I would keep patting first while they're on a flat surface. I'd remove the hand that's under their head, and I would keep this one kind of on the side, still patting, and eventually move it so it's on top of their chest and just lightly pat, and then eventually stop. And if they seem settled, move my hand. The reason I switch this top padding and I keep my hand on their hip for a little bit is because a lot of babies, when they lay down, they kind of have their like legs scrunched up like this. So when you put them down, you immediately let go and walk away. Eventually, they're going to kind of like settle in. And when they settle in, they kick their legs and they end up waking themselves up from that like big change in position. So I'm kind of doing the padding, letting them settle their legs slowly, hand on the chest so they know that I'm still there, and slowly easing it off. As soon as my hands are off of the baby and I'm able to, like, they're down in their crib, I get out of the room. I don't stand and look at them because they know you're there. I'm like, put the baby down and leave the room if they're asleep. But yeah, not just setting them down right away, because a lot of times you set them down right away and they're like, wait, I was just being rocked and comforted and now you're gone. The AAP recommends room sharing for the first year. This can be really hard for a lot of families. The benefits are the highest in the first 4 months, but that's also a really tough period for a lot of families because they're just settling into having a baby, and it can be hard for your body to adjust to having another person in the room. Of course, there's like the emotional aspect of it where you're just nervous because you're a parent and you care about your baby and want to be checking in on them. But then there's also the fact that like a lot of babies are very grunty and noisy in the beginning, and they make noise in their sleep. So even though they're soundly sleeping and we don't need to do anything, we hear that and we think, oh, they're waking up and we want to go check on them. So our sleep becomes very disrupted. My only recommendation with that is really just wait it out and see how it goes in those first few weeks. See if your body adjusts to picking up on your baby's cues and when they're actually waking up. There's this thing in France. Over here, we just call it the French pause, but there's a word in French that means the pause. And it's something parents do where when their baby cries, they go over to the space where the baby is, but out of sight, and they just wait for a second to see, because sometimes babies are just making noises. They're communicating the same way we do. Sometimes they might just want to make a little sound, get it out of their system, and then they're calmed back down and they're going into the next sleep cycle. Or maybe they just like saw those fan blades against the ceiling and thought the contrast was cool and were making a noise. And all baby sounds in the very beginning to us sound like a cry where we're like, okay, we need to go and help them. And a lot of times we do. A lot of times they are letting us know that they need something, but sometimes it really is just they're making a noise. So kind of having that pause. If you have a baby monitor where it's a camera, looking and seeing like, okay, is the baby actually awake before you rush into the room, or are they just kind of like repositioning themselves, getting comfortable again? And eventually at night, your body starts to pick up on that and pick up on, is this a moment where I actually have to wake up? Also, your baby's sleep stretches will get longer and that sleep will become less disrupted. But in the beginning, one of the reasons it's really good to have your baby in the same room is because they sync their sleep with you. So if you're a good sleeper, your baby's likely to pick up on that and sync with you and become a good sleeper too. It also reduces the risk of SIDS. Being in sync with them, we're aware when something goes wrong, we're closer to them. So if something happens with their breathing, we're able to get to them more quickly, things like that. At 4 months, your baby's body starts to produce melatonin on its own. In the beginning, they only get it from your milk. They also you can do things to encourage melatonin production. So in the morning, as soon as you start your day, going and opening up the curtains, this also lets your baby know, like, okay, it's morning, the sun is out, we're starting our day. This isn't the same as that dark space I was sleeping in at night. My body is waking up now. It also helps with vitamin D. All of us up here in Vermont know that we are all vitamin D deficient. So our babies are vitamin D deficient as well. We just don't get as much sun. So opening up those curtains, I think one of the best activities you can do in the morning is like, I'm not a morning person. I know some people are. I don't really like to get up in the morning. I would like to sit down and have a cup of coffee first before anyone really talks to me. So getting up in the morning with a baby can be tricky. Because they're very ready to start their day. I mean, anytime they wake up, they have a lot more energy. So going in the nursery or in your room, wherever your baby's sleeping, opening those curtains at that morning wake up time, doing the diaper change, putting new clothes on them, whatever you want to do with them. And then if you have some kind of seat, whether it's like one of those little reclined like bouncer seats, or even if you have like a play mat or something, I like to set it either near a window or near like if you have a sliding back door in your house where you get a lot of light in, setting it there and setting them in a position where they can look outside. Babies love looking outside. If it's nice weather, even taking them outside at this time could be great. But I like to set the baby up where they're able to look outside, get some of that vitamin D going, get that sunlight, let their body know that it's morning. And while they're like hanging out and distracted, because even in the very beginning, this is like babies will just stare outside. They really like the outdoors. Something about trees. Babies really like to look at trees. But they're distracted for a minute and I can go and be right next to them in the same room, but like making my coffee and just sit with them. I like to put on music, something I like to listen to, or a podcast. There's some noise. Music's great for babies. A podcast, them hearing talking will benefit them because they are learning vocabulary, but it's also something that's benefiting you. You're doing something for yourself, and you doing something for yourself is going to help you feel better and be more present as a parent. So it's okay to adapt the things that you like to do to include your baby and still fit them in your schedule. You don't have to let everything that you used to do before pregnancy, before having the baby, go. You still get to do those things. But also it's just a nice calm start to the morning, because I think that a lot of families, you wake up and you're like, okay, we're in survival mode. It's time to start the day. It's go, go, go. We got to like get moving. And in the beginning, there's not a lot of activities you can do with your baby. So rushing through them all at 7 a.m. and then, lunchtime comes around and you're like, okay, we still have hours until bedtime and we did everything. Like, what are we supposed to do now? So starting the day off slow and not rushing into all those activities. I won't even like change out of my pajamas or really start the day until I get that like morning coffee, music playing, just a calm start to the day. And then I go and get ready while the baby is having that first morning nap. So by the time you're done with your coffee and breakfast and baby's done looking outside, they're probably going to be ready to go down for a nap. In the very beginning, a wake window for an infant is like 45 minutes to an hour at most for those first few weeks. So they're going to be ready to go down for a nap. And if you get them down for a good nap, if they take, even if it's just a 45-minute nap, that's 45 minutes where they're asleep and you can go and take a shower and know that they're going to be asleep for those 45 minutes and just have the monitor with you in case, because you might have one of those moments where you have to run out of the shower mid-shower to get to your baby. You can also try putting your baby in the bathroom and having them like in one of those little reclined bouncy seats or something where they're like close by. But if you really want that like uninterrupted nice shower at the start of your day, getting it in during nap time, and having that routine, your baby will begin to pick up on that routine and know like, okay, every morning we go and do this thing and then I go down for a nap. We do all of these things and then it's nap time, and their body starts to pick up on that and will know like towards the end of that morning activity that it's time to rest, and their body starts to calm down and feel ready to go to sleep. obviously there's going to be days where your schedule changes and you go and maybe you have an event, you have to go to an appointment, some kind of activity. That's okay. One day isn't going to throw the whole thing off. Obviously you still have to go in and live your life, and your baby's going to adapt. But having a routine isn't a bad thing. I think there's this pressure though to set a schedule with an infant. I think I like the word routine better. I think having those routines of like, okay, yes, we aim for nap time around this time, but the concern isn't really getting it down at that time. It's just doing those things that help signal to the baby that it's nap time. Going in the room, turning on the white noise, dimming the lights, doing a diaper change, doing a feeding, rocking, whatever your little routine looks like, their body is going to know like, okay, well, when we go in this room and we turn off the light and turn on the sound machine, that means I'm going to sleep. So when you do those things, their body starts to like calm down. It can be good in the evening too. If your baby is still awake around the time that your family's eating dinner, but having a quiet kind of calmer dinner and dimming the lights, turning things off in the house to let them know that it's going to be bedtime soon. You can also aim to have them down before you eat. One of the things I recommend families do if they're struggling to get one-on-one time as a couple is you can have one parent focus on bedtime while the other one is focused on making dinner, and you can switch who does it what night. Or if one of you prefers doing bedtime and one really likes to cook, then dividing it that way. But having someone who's cooking dinner while the other one is handling bedtime, and then when bedtime's done and baby is down, coming back out into the kitchen and dinner's ready and you're able to sit down and have a meal and your baby's asleep and you can sit and talk and have that one-on-one time can be really great. Some people have a baby who is super chill and calm during dinner time and will just hang out on their play mat or something and be close by but calm. But sometimes people have a baby who needs more attention during that time of night, and it can make dinner very stressful. Yeah, that was my rant on sleep. I want to show you guys a couple different swaddles. Obviously we went over like the classic muslin swaddle, but babies, they're pretty strong. Eventually they break out of that, and they need something that's has a little more reinforcement to it and really holds them in. So I'm just gonna grab these. I have a bunch of them, so. I'm not telling you guys to buy all of these, by the way, but I want to go through a couple different options because each baby likes a different thing. And that's why we have all of these different swaddles. The classic one that I recommend is the Halo Sleep Sack Swaddle. This is like a very simple, easy to use swaddle. And it's easy to transition them out of because, again, once your baby is around the age of 3 months, once they're rolling over on their stomach, they cannot have their arms down in a swaddle. Their arms need to be out because if they roll over on their stomach, they need to be able to roll back. They need their hands to do that. So this one, you have this like sack that you put them in, their arms go through, and it zips up. One of the things I like about it is the zipper is actually located at the top. So it zips down, which means when you're changing your baby's diaper at night, the zipper's down here and pulls up and you can get easy access to their diaper. But their arms would go down and there's this Velcro band that comes around and basically straight jackets their arms down. But you don't have to put their arms in that. This part could just go around their stomach and they could have their arms just out here. So it's easy to transition out of because there's an option of how they can wear it without having their arms down. So that one's like a super simple, easy one. It has a picture on the inside on like there's a tag in it that shows you how to use it. So there's an easy diagram and it's pretty easy to figure out. But then we get into some of the more complicated, newer ones. Nested Bean is a brand that I really like. They make one that, well, all of theirs have this little bean that's weighted. And it's just a little bit of weight. It feels similar to just like having someone's hand on your chest or on your back. So for babies who really like to be held, this can be great because it makes them feel like someone is still there. This one has these little arm things that unzip, so you could put their arms in or out. When their arms are in, again, you have the zipper that comes down. There's a band that holds their arm down. So again, just the Velcro band that holds it in place. And they're zipped up in there. And this one also has an option as a zipper at the top, so you could zip down to put them in, but there's also a second zipper at the bottom if you wanted to just unzip the bottom at night for diaper changes. They make another one, same brand, Nested Bean, that is just like a Velcro swaddle. So comes around and Velcros and your baby's in there, but then has a weighted layer that can go on top of them to make them feel like they're being held. So yeah. And then when you're all done with all of their swaddle options, this is the one I really like, is they have a sleep sack that's really great for older babies. You can use it in the beginning too, but I found that it works best with babies that are around like 5 months and up, but it's just a sleep sack, wearable blanket type thing. So their arms are just, this is just unbuttoned, but you would button this and their arms just come out here, just like the Halo sleep sack, and it's just got a little bean on it. You can also put it on them backwards. So when they're older, once they're rolling over and they're able to roll back and forth from belly to back on their own, they can sleep on their stomach once they're able to do that completely on their own. It's not recommended that you put them on their stomach, but if you start them on their back and they can get there on their own, that's okay. This can be flipped over backwards, so the weighted part is on their back, so it feels like a hand on their back. And then this is another one that a lot of people have been liking lately. It's called the Ollie. It's just another Velcro one, and the bottom's open, but it like you roll it in a ball basically, and there's a band that holds it in place, so you can roll it up to wherever their feet are and have it kind of in this ball thing. But there's 3 Velcro parts that are just like this, that Velcro on. And this one goes not at their shoulders, but a little bit below, like at armpit level. So this would be at armpit level, and it pushes on different pressure points in the baby that help encourage good sleep. And it was designed by, I believe, a physical therapist designed it, but the person who designed it did a lot of research on what points on the baby are safe for a swaddle to be tight around to make sure that it's not causing any developmental issues. So the key is just putting it on the correct way, and you get those benefits of the little bit of pressure to help encourage good sleep. So there are a lot of swaddle options. There are even more than what I just showed you, but those have been my favorites. It's kind of trial and error of what works, but a lot of people get those classic, just like Velcro ones. I believe they're made by Swaddle Me. And I found that babies are really able to break out of those. So my recommendation would be to start with a Halo swaddle. And if your baby seems like they really like being held, maybe try something else. But also see if any of your friends have one that they're getting rid of, because all of these came from past clients who gave them to me to let other families I work with borrow, which has been great because it's like $35 per swaddle. And if you buy a bunch of swaddles to try and your baby doesn't like any of them, you just spent all of this money for no reason. So I think with anything, when you're trying something on your baby, see who's passing something on, because you're going to go through so many things. There's so many things to try. And your baby might not like any of the ones you bought. Yeah. Obviously with SIDS, back is best, keeping your baby in a space where there's nothing in the crib or bassinet with them, no loose objects. That's one of the reason after the very beginning of them being in a muslin swaddle, it's good to transition into something else, because they can break out and that just becomes a loose blanket that's rolling around in the crib with them. I'm a big supporter of pacifiers for infant sleep, but again, going back to what I said earlier, making sure you establish that good feeding relationship first and that you're not using it as a way to just like quiet your baby when they're cueing that they are hungry. So waiting a little bit to establish that good feeding relationship, but also waiting a little bit to settle in and really understand your baby's cues, because in the beginning, it's like learning a new language, and it can be really tricky to really understand your baby's cues, because at first it just sounds like crying, but eventually you will notice that your baby has a specific hungry cry, a specific sleepy cry. I think every baby has a sleepy noise that they make, which you will see with your baby is they probably will have a sound that they make as they're falling asleep. I worked with one baby who he just let out this, like, I don't even know if I'd call it a cry. It was more of like a moany, groany kind of cry. So it wasn't like a scream, but it would get loud right as he was falling asleep. So he'd like get really whiny, right as his body was like falling asleep, but his eyes would be closed. And at first we were like, oh no, is he like okay? Does he need something? As we were rocking him, and then we noticed that was just a sound he made as his body was transitioning into sleep, and he was actually fine. I think it's interesting because as adults, we make noises in our sleep. We have little habits, like I tap my foot as I'm falling asleep. Like I always like have done this thing where I kick my foot or have to move some part of my body right as I'm falling asleep. But with babies, we're hyper aware of like everything that they're doing. So we're like, oh no, something must be wrong. But eventually you realize that those are just normal things that your baby does as they fall asleep. Also, like the way that they wake up and they get distracted at night by a light or something. We wake up, we just go back to sleep so quickly now that we don't remember it in the morning. So all of those things your baby's doing in their sleep are probably things that you're doing as well and just aren't really aware of. Going back to like what I was saying earlier with social feedings at night, obviously your baby is going to be like the cutest thing ever that you just want to stare at them. And at night they're going to be, I'm sorry if my dogs start barking because one of them's going now, but it always seems like at night when your baby's asleep, that's when you just want to like stare at them even more. And you're like, oh my gosh, they're like this tiny little angel. And I just want to look at their sweet little face. And keep all the lights on and stare at them and take a picture of them and everything. And then your whole body's awake and you're just standing there appreciating your baby, which is a great feeling to be there appreciating your baby. But to encourage good sleep, we really want to like keep it dark, not have all of those disruptions. One of the things that you can try is doing a dream feed. So most babies will latch onto your breast or a bottle to feed while they're still pretty sleepy. So not fully waking them up, or fully waking them up, but encouraging them to keep eating while they're starting to get into that sleepy state. So doing things like stroking their cheek and like tickling their feet, even when they're falling asleep, to have them finish up that feeding. And it's not bad if they fall asleep while they're eating. It can actually make that transition to putting them back down a lot easier because they're already asleep. So you just want to, once they're asleep, hold them upright on your shoulder for a little bit. You can still do like a lighter pat than you usually would with burping. Obviously with burping, we're doing like a nice firm pat on the back, but just a lighter one at night if they're already asleep, and just hold them upright, make sure everything settles first. But if they're already asleep, put them down. The dream feed can also be great if your baby consistently wakes, say at 11 p.m. Every single night your baby wants to eat at 11 p.m., but you really want to go to sleep at like 10:15. Try doing a dream feed at like 10:30. Then you're finishing up the feeding and you're able to go to sleep. But your baby, is still getting in that normal feeding time they have just a little bit earlier. One of the things that a lot of parents struggle with is your baby, again, with that lack of sleep that you're getting a lot less sleep. You feel a lot more stressed. And then you have this crying baby who needs all these things from you, and it can feel very overwhelming. When you're feeling overwhelmed, It's important to make sure that you're still holding your baby properly, that you're not shaking your baby or putting them at risk of shaken baby syndrome. But if you are feeling that overwhelmed, it is not wrong of you to set your baby down in a safe space like a crib and step out of the room and go and collect yourself, because you're going to be a lot better at parenting and calming your baby if you go and collect yourself and take a second to catch your breath and go back into that room than you will if you didn't do that and you're just standing there getting overwhelmed. Also, your baby picks up on your mood. So when you both are at this point where you're like, your baby's upset, so then you start getting stressed about comforting them, and then they start crying more because they sense that you're stressed, so then you get more stressed and you're both just getting stressed and stressed and stressed. It's just building it up versus, you're both stressed, you go and catch your breath, take a second, step out of the room, collect yourself, go right back in with a calm mindset, and your baby's like, oh, here's this calm person who's here to take care of me. This is a person I trust, I feel safe with, and they're calm, so I'm going to be calm. And you're able to comfort them and calm down. So don't feel bad about just setting your baby. Sorry, that was my puppy whining. Don't feel bad about setting your baby down and stepping out of the room just for a moment. Obviously, you're not leaving your baby. You're still in the house. You're still there if they really need you. But a lot of times we know that crying, as long as they have everything they need, it's okay for you to step away for a second. I think one of the reasons people can feel so stressed is going back to like what we were talking about earlier is, you at the beginning of the day feel this like adrenaline rush of like, okay, we're starting the day. We have all these things we need to get done. We have limited activities we can do, but like the baby's awake, so we got to just start doing things. But those limited activities make it so by lunchtime, you've done everything that you have thought of doing with your baby. And you're like, okay, we still have hours till bedtime and there's nothing to do. And the day is about to drag on. And this could be, even if you're not staying home in those first few weeks where you're on leave, you're still at home with a baby who eventually you begin to feel a little more settled. You're moving around more after the birth, but your baby still really isn't doing much. That first big milestone that your baby's going to have, like a social milestone, isn't until week 6, and it's just a social smile. And after that, it's going to be a little bit till you start really getting to like play with your baby. I think one of the things you can do is looking at the activities you did before you were pregnant, before your baby was born, and think about ways you can do them with your baby. So maybe you really liked yoga. Maybe you can't go to the intense yoga class you used to go to, but you could go do yoga in the park with your friends and bring the baby along, or go to a postpartum yoga class, or do yoga at home. You could do a workout that includes your baby, where you're doing like, obviously in the beginning, wait until you were cleared by your doctor and it's safe to begin working out again. But once you're cleared, you could do an ab workout where the weight you're using is your baby. You can baby wear while working out if that's something that's important to you. Or other activities like, in that morning period where you're trying to have a calm start to your day. If you're really into podcasts, put a podcast on. If you really like to read while you're sitting in a chair, nursing or feeding your baby, master that one-handed bottle feed and have a Kindle or some kind of ebook or something that you're able to hold and use with one hand instead. So adapt what you used to do to fit postpartum and doing it with a baby. And then activities that are just more centered around the baby. So maybe you didn't used to go on walks all the time, but going on a walk with your baby is probably going to put them to sleep. The fresh air is great for them. The sunlight's great for them. And it's some time out of the house where you can really clear your mind. So go out for a walk, go sit outside. I think that the two like resets on a baby body are the outdoors and bath time. If you have them in warm water and they like a bath, it can really reset them. So again, if they're really fussy, go and do that reset, but also just having that as an activity to do. Go put a giant blanket outside, bring your book outside, bring your lunch outside, bring something to do, put them on the blanket, let them stare at the sky and stare at the trees, and they will be very happy. Also simple things like walking around the house and giving your baby a tour of the house. So there are all these objects around us, that we see every single day. We put them in our house, we decorated these walls, we see them all the time. They aren't that exciting to us, but a baby has never seen these things before. They don't know what that camera on the shelf is. They've never seen that. That's crazy to them. So walking your baby around and just pointing at an object on the wall and saying like, oh, that's a camera. This is how you use a camera. It might seem weird. It might seem like, why am I just stuck in this house talking to my baby all day? But there are benefits to it. You are encouraging vocabulary and speech in your baby. You're teaching them something. And it could even just be like, if you have a wall in your house where all the family photos are, go to the wall, show them each of the family members, point them out, name them. Eventually they're going to start to really remember that information. And they're just excited to see something new. They don't need a huge amount of stimulation. Doing a lot of activities can lead to overstimulation. So really just keeping it simple. Reading a book to your baby, again, encouraging vocabulary. It's great to introduce reading early on, but in the beginning, they're not really aware of what you're reading. So read a book that you want to read, just read it out loud. And that can be a great way to get your reading in while including your baby. Tummy time. If you're doing the workout, you can have your baby do tummy time while you're planking, or you can just have them do tummy time. You don't have to be doing anything. You can just be nearby. But tummy time is really great for them to build their neck strength. If your baby doesn't like tummy time, because tummy time is something that's going to be recommended to you a lot. And if your baby doesn't like that, try baby wearing. When you baby wear, your baby has to lift their head to look up at you. Baby wearing is a great way to bond with your baby. It's a great way to multitask. In the beginning, I really like wraps and even the like newer wraps that are like the baby Catan and the Boppy comfy fit. Those ones are a little easier to do. They're not just like one long piece of fabric. They're already kind of done for you. And then you just have a few pieces you need to wrap. Like the Boppy comfy fit, you buckle it and like just do the little wrap band part, or the Catan, you just slip it on and put the baby in it. And it's got the like same fabric as a wrap, but it's pre-wrapped basically. But it keeps them nice and snug, and it feels a lot more secure in that newborn phase. To me, it feels like their head is a lot more secure and they're just like nice and snug against you, and they're not too big where they're like out and you can't really function and like use your hands and be hands-free. But they're in there, they're secure, and you're able to like still go and do things, whether that's something you're doing for you, if it's things around the house, or if you just want those benefits of bonding and it is more for your baby. You can also nurse while baby wearing. And again, them lifting their head is encouraging that neck strength. You can also do that if you don't baby wear it, just by laying down on like a couch or a bed or something and having your baby lay on you and you kind of like lifting your head up to try to look at them, or just talking to them. Lay back, have them on you, talk to them, and they'll start trying to lift their head up. So yeah, lots of ways to get tummy time in. Again, with the reset on the baby body. So bath time can be great for babies. One of the issues a lot of parents run into is babies not liking being in the bath for a long time, or maybe not liking it at all to begin with. Make sure that the water is warm enough. It should be between 90 and 100 degrees. You can set the water heater in your house to where it will never go over 120. So you're still able to have hot showers for yourself, but you know that the water can only go up to a certain temperature, and that can make it a little easier to set it. You can test the water with your elbow. So just put your elbow in the water, see how it feels. If it feels too hot, it should feel lukewarm, a little bit warmer than lukewarm. And you can also just get a thermometer to have. There's like little rubber duckies they make that go in the bath and tell you the temperature. In the beginning, you should only do a sponge bath, again, with the umbilical cord. You don't want to get any water on that, so just doing a sponge bath on their skin. I'm a big fan of co-bathing if you have an extra set of hands. So the hard part with co-bathing is getting out of the bath. You're holding the slippery baby, you're trying to step out. Can be kind of nerve-wracking. So having someone there where you're able to hand the baby to them, they can wrap them in a towel, get them dried off, and then you're able to step out on your own. Should be aware though, when you put a baby in water, usually they will pee or poop. So even if you're giving them a normal bath, that sudden change in temperature when you put them in the water usually calms their body enough that some kind of bowel movement or peeing happens. So making sure that you have a washcloth or something nearby to clean that up, but also being aware that when you're in the bath with them, that you might get pooped on. So the bath isn't necessarily for you. It's just for offering an extra level of comfort to your baby while they're on the water. And for that bonding, you do get something out of it. You get that bonding time, but it's not for you to get clean is basically what I'm saying. I wanted to demonstrate a couple carriers, but I don't know if we have enough time. I'd like to keep more time for going over like questions and things. And again, on Zoom, it's a little hard to demonstrate things. But the last thing I really wanted to get into is infant feeding. So obviously it is your choice what you do with your baby, but I'm going to talk about formula and I'm going to talk about breastfeeding. And I'm just going to go over some of the guidelines. It's a lot of information. Usually you will be sent home from somewhere, pediatrician, OBGYN, midwife, wherever you're giving birth, birth center, hospital. Someone will give you some kind of chart that you will likely be able to like stick on your fridge as a magnet or something that goes over the guidelines. But typically the rule is, you'll hear of the rule of 5 or the rule of 6. People go back and forth with which one they use. I'm going to say 5 I'm going to tell you guys 5 just to be on the safe side with numbers. But breast milk is good in a bottle for 2 hours once the baby comes in contact with the nipple. But once you have pumped that milk and have set it out on the counter, it is good on the counter for 5 hours. It's good in the fridge for up to 5 days. You will be able to tell if your milk is going bad when it's left in the fridge. It's like any other milk in the way that it's going to get a smell. It's going to get a little chunky. It is normal for the fat in your milk to separate. So if you see fat around the bottle while it's being stored in the fridge, that is normal. That doesn't mean it's gone bad. And it's good for 5 months in the freezer. A deep freezer, it's good up to a year. So if you have a pretty good supply and you want to store milk, it's good to invest in a deep freezer. But if you're just storing enough in the freezer that you're going to go through it by 5 months, you can just store it in a normal freezer. Just don't store it in the door. You don't want the milk in the door. So you want them actually back in the fridge and freezer. With formula, it's only good for 1 hour once the baby has come in contact with the nipple. Once it's been prepared, it's good on the counter for 2 hours. You can make it and then put it in the fridge and use it within 24 hours. So you could prep all your formula before. With reheating milk, you don't want to reheat it once it's already been warmed. So if it's on the counter, it's already lukewarm when you've pumped it and left it out on the counter, that's fine to just offer baby. Once you put it in the fridge and pull it back out, you only want to reheat it one time because the nutrients are being reduced every time that you reheat it. And once you've reheated it and given it to baby's come in contact with that nipple. So it shouldn't be going back in the fridge and being reheated anyways because they've already come in contact with it. You don't want to refreeze milk. Once it's been thawed out, you should not be refreezing it. To warm up a bottle, there's a bunch of different bottle warmers you can get. There's tons of different options. I honestly prefer running hot water, filling a mug with hot water and setting the bottle in a mug. My tap water heats up faster than a bottle warmer would heat up. So it's quicker for me to run tap water, get it nice and hot, put it in a mug or a glass or something and set the bottle in that to warm up, or just running the bottle under hot water. Same with thawing out milk. I run it under like a lukewarm water to get it to thaw out. Or if you know how much milk you're going to use the next day or even like the next 2 days, if you pull out more than you actually needed, you can pull it out of the freezer and set it in the fridge the night before, and it should take about 24 hours to thaw out. at most. So pulling out milk bags before, and just planning ahead for that day is also a good option if you don't want to have to run underwater, because running underwater is pretty quick, but when your baby's crying and you want to get the milk ready pretty quickly, it can be annoying to have to go through a big process to get that prepared. Typically, the recommendation, which your pediatrician and lactation support will be able to tell you what's best for you, but you're feeding your baby every 3 hours in the very beginning. That's from the start of the feed time. So when they say every blank amount of hours, that's from the time that you start the feeding, not the time that the feeding ends. Obviously, if it's a feeding that like your baby drank way more than they typically do, they've nursed for or fed for an hour or so, and it was way longer than usual, and they got a lot more in, adjust that time, trust your gut on when you think your baby will need to be woken up to eat next. Obviously, if they wake sooner than 3 hours or are just up and hungry sooner than 3 hours, don't deny them food, feed them when they are hungry. But if you have a baby who's a really deep sleeper and you're waking them, it's typically every 3 hours until they're at their birth weight. And then your pediatrician and lactation support would reevaluate where your baby is at, make sure they're on their growth curve, making sure they're gaining as quickly as they want them to. It also, there's a lot of factors that go into how long your baby will go between feedings. Depends on their size when they were born. Yeah, lots of things like that. So talking to your pediatrician and then taking what your pediatrician says and going and speaking to lactation about that, so you can set up a plan that supports what the pediatrician thinks that your baby needs and what is best for your supply as well. Obviously, if you're doing formula, your lactation support you wouldn't need to see lactation. You would just be speaking with your pediatrician about that. That was a lot of information, and that was pretty much all that I'd planned to go over. So I'm ready to open the floor to questions. If people have questions, I know that was a lot to go over on Zoom, because it's different than being in person and being able to like really demonstrate things. And also like go around and talk to each of you and show you like hands-on what we're doing.
Great. I'm going to stop recording now, Jess. Thanks for all that great information.